Hey there folks, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and the Call of Duty reveal was probably one of the most successful ones in recent history, as it appealed to a wide variety of first-person shooter gamers, and it feels as though, in terms of just how it's been received, it's gone relatively smoothly. Some of the new feature sets and the slightly more slow and methodical pace of Call of Duty, as well as the customization, has really gone down well with most people in first-person shooters. Now with that all said, today I want to give you a quick-fire video on every single change and key feature that's in the new Call of Duty for 2019, and a lot has changed for Modern Warfare, so let's dive on in. So to begin with, Call of Duty will be offering 2v2, 6v6, 10v10 and even 20 versus 20 variants in their game modes. Now 2v2 is the competitive gunfight mode, 6v6 will likely be the competitive mode full stop for things like search and destroy and the new mode hack attack, and 10v10 and 20v20 will likely be larger scale capture modes, and there has been rumours floating around that player counts above 20v20 and even closer to 100 players could potentially be in the game at launch. All of this is combined with underlying rumours that a Battle Royale mode has yet to be announced, which will likely be 100 players if it is announced. But back to confirmed details, let's talk about the beta, which will feature crossplay from the get-go and launches in September exclusively first on PlayStation, with an open beta and a private beta, but then moves on to all platforms later on in September. Now crossplay is going to be featured in both the beta and the final launch, and the way it will work is input based, meaning that if you're using a mouse and keyboard, you will come up against players in all platforms who are also using mouse and keyboard, or if you're using a controller, you'll come up against players of all platforms who are using controllers. So if anybody on PC is using a controller, they'll matchmake with consoles, and if anybody on console is using a mouse and keyboard, they'll matchmake with PC players to avoid an overarching disparity. Because if you have keyboard and mouse players against a console, they will naturally be more dominant and win due to the precision of a mouse. All of these settings are likely to come with opt-in and out options, meaning that if you do want to play against PC players who are using mouse and keyboard with a controller, you likely will have that option, or if you want to be completely removed from the entire crossplay element, you'll likely also have that option as well. Moving on to setting and map design. Now the setting of the new Call of Duty features Western and Eastern factions facing off against one another. Some of them are grounded like the SAS, but others are sort of made up, so to speak. And the idea is effectively there is a Western and Eastern coalition who are at war. But the actual setting itself appears to be Russian and Ukrainian, as well as some dazzlings of Middle Eastern warfare as well. So you're likely going to see regions such as Afghanistan, places like Ukraine and the borders of Russia as the primary targets in terms of what you're going to see in map design, and also what you will see in the campaign. Speaking of maps, there's actually been some improvements there too. The original Modern Warfare 1 and Modern Warfare 2 map designer has actually returned for this new Modern Warfare installment and has been designing since the very beginning of development. So it's likely you're going to see a much better layout in terms of maps, but there also has been a change of emphasis here too. No longer is Call of Duty focusing specifically on lanes for their larger modes. Now in the 6v6 and 2v2 variants there will be some lanes of course, but the overarching idea of map design has shifted to primary objectives being buildings. Now, it's one of the reasons they demonstrated the headquarters mode in the actual live stream itself is because the maps have been designed so that certain buildings within the maps are the focus points for everything that happens. i.e., if you control a certain building within the map, then you're likely going to play better and control the flow of play full stop. So ultimately what you're seeing here is a shift from lane-based arcade shooting to a much more realistic setting where individual buildings play more of a central focus in map design. And finally, there'll be no Season Pass featuring in the new Call of Duty, so it appears that both maps and modes will be available for free as free content for everyone, and it's likely that weapons should hopefully be the same as well, and everything else is going to be held behind a cosmetic paywall, so you're going to see lots of skins and operators who you can purchase with in-game currency for real money, but it's likely that the microtransactions will only go that far. Hopefully speaking, there has been no official news on it. Now to dive into technical details, there is a full entry mechanic system on doors, meaning that you'll be able to both breach doors using tactical as well as lethal grenades, as well as the option to open or close them at varying degrees, and the ability to run straight through them. You'll have the option to sprint through doors that will open them straight away, but likely will delay how quickly you can shoot. Modern Warfare will also feature a full ballistic system, meaning that velocity, caliber, and penetration will all have calculations surrounding it. For example, if you were to fire a certain weapon like the M4A1, you'd be using 5.56 bullet rounds which have a certain degree of damage, velocity that makes the bullets travel over certain distances at certain times, and those two combined will indicate how much penetration the bullet has on metal, wood, and other materials. And all of this is done by algorithmic calculations in-game, meaning that you're going to see lots of things happen in Call of Duty in terms of penetration and in terms of kills. So it's likely, for example, that if you're using a marksman rifle, you're going to have 7.62 bullets, which are of a higher caliber and a higher velocity, whereas certain assault rifles will be lower, and certain SMGs will likely use 9mm rounds or 45 ACP rounds and have a higher velocity. So you're going to see lots of various different calculations in terms of how these things are figured out in-game. This aligns quite closely with how Call of Duty is focusing the new game. You're no longer going to be lethal due to your operator or special ability, you're going to be lethal because of the weapon you own, and the idea behind the gunsmith is that effectively the weapon is the central focus of what you do. Speaking of ballistics and gunsmiths, there are 30 to 60 different weapon attachments per weapon, which is pretty damn cool. This includes things like stocks, underbarrels, barrels themselves, things like muzzles, sights, optics, grips, everything really in between magazine sizes. And this moves away from the Pick 10 system, so you can completely customize all of this, but each individual attachment will have pros and cons. So for example, if you want to use something like a flash hider or a suppressor, you might expect things like a range drop, but you'll also get the added benefits that come with that. Each weapon also features a perk slot which you can use to swap out with actual individual attachments, so you can gain a perk but lose an attachment like a barrel or something in between. Also, alongside all of this is gun variants, and this is something that's really cool and a key feature that I think went amiss for most people. So, in Call of Duty there is the AK-47, but there is no AK-74U and there isn't an RPK in the game either. But using the gunsmith, you can actually create these guns. You can saw off the stock, add a lighter barrel, add a CQB grip and a magazine, and use an AK-74U that's a lighter variant of the AK-47. Likewise, you can add a drum magazine, a bipod, and a long to medium range optic, and you'll have an RPK. So effectively, using one base weapon, you can create various different weapons. Moving on, we have the loss of the minimap. The minimap will no longer be in any main Call of Duty mode if there isn't a UAV in the sky. To compensate for this, individual squad mates or teammates will have outlines to indicate their position. Alongside all of this, Call of Duty is getting a realism mode with a reduced HUD. Kill streaks are also returning this year, including the tactical nuke, and it'll be interesting to see how many different variants of kill streaks we'll see, but most of them actually will require laser designation. So as opposed to the previous days where you could just throw down a random kill streak in the middle of nowhere and get loads of kills, you'll actually have to have a line of sight on your enemy players before you call it in. The A10 Thunderbolt is a great example of this. It's an effective and very powerful kill streak, but you actually have to be aiming at your targets with binoculars in order to make this happen. There is a brand new engine in the game as well, which is pretty obvious, but this comes with some new features as well. There's revivable teammates in cyberhack mode. We don't know if this applies elsewhere to one life modes like search and destroy, but ultimately you can revive teammates if they go down. Now there's no indication as to how this mechanic is specifically working, or if headshots will stop that from happening, for example, but it is an option in game, which makes it very Battlefield-like. Likewise, you also have the ability to throw down ammo boxes to refuel your ammo, so a lot of similar Battlefield features entering Call of Duty. And finally, there will also be exploration-style Easter eggs, like in High Rise, where you can get on top of the crane, or also on top of some of the buildings. So you may find specific and very interesting flanking and camping points, dependent on how much you explore the maps yourself and grow to learn them. Two features that I almost nearly missed there is the full cooldown system that's coming to the perks in-game. So for example, if you're using stopping power, only a certain number of your bullets will actually have added damage before the perk has to cool down before it's reused again. Alongside all of this, there is an automatic health regeneration, and the stim does exist, but you can apply it as, I believe, a perk or an attachment or some kind of thing on the side, so it's not necessitated, but it's something you can use. Ultimately though, I'd expect a lot of the perks in the game presently to either be removed or actually be heavily nerfed and changed before the game is finally released. So folks, that's it from me today, the Tactical Brit, and that's all the new features coming in the new Call of Duty. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comment section below. Is there anything you're particularly excited about? And it looks like I'll probably be seeing some of the gameplay, or at least getting hands-on with it, at Gamescom this year, so hopefully I can bring back some exclusive footage from there. As always folks, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.